Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, I am Aaron, aka the Handy Outdoor Nerd, and this lovely guy down below is.
I am Chris, aka MrCarrellScience. How's everybody doing tonight?
All right, so. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, had playing in my ears. All right, so as you've seen on Twitter and all that, we've got a special guest, Bob, aka Mr. I Like to Make Stuff.
Hey, glad to have you.
All right, so Bob, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody that does not know who you are and what you do?
My name is Bob. I'm just a dude that makes stuff in his basement, and I have a YouTube channel where I show people what I'm making. That's pretty much it.
So what got you on the making train, I could say?
Well, that's a pretty broad question. I mean, I've been making stuff my whole life, but I think as far as like making content around it, I did software development for 15 years or so, and sitting in front of a computer, you know, is a certain type of problem solving, but I ended up needing to do some stuff with my hands, and then started doing that as a hobby, trying to make a video so it would be valuable to somebody else, and then it just kind of took off. It's kind of been downhill in a good way, but like falling downhill, just this momentum ever since it was a hobby. So yeah.
Oh, cool. So what got you into woodworking, and then what also got you into 3D printing?
I mean, I've been kind of doing woodworking stuff since I was a kid. Not heavily, but my dad and my granddad both built a lot of stuff, and so I spent some time watching them. Not a whole lot of time doing it growing up, but a lot of time watching them and just getting familiar with it. My other grandfather was a contractor, so he built buildings and stuff. And so I think probably when I was in college, I needed a table or a bed or something like that, and so just kind of picked up some cheap tools and started trying to figure it out. And then I did that, and somebody else also needed one, and so asked me if I could do something with them, and I just kind of started doing things here and there. And by the time I got out of college, I was making furniture for my house and whatever I could come up with. And then the 3D printing stuff was always kind of like this. I mean, back in the day, it was this like futuristic thing that was really expensive and really hard to get into and really confusing. And I found a cheap kit printer. It was a Delta printer, and so I put that together. Got it. It was a Kickstarter. Got it for $500. I was like, this will be the way that I'll give that a shot. And that printer was terrible and gave me nothing but trouble. But it got my appetite for it, so I started figuring out 3D printing a little bit after that. So it's just here and there. I don't do a whole lot of it, but it's always one of those tools that we can easily grab whenever it's necessary or whenever it really helps.
Yeah, I know I've been watching more of your stuff, trying to catch up on some of the stuff you've been doing lately with being busy with a whole bunch of other things. I mean, following everyone that does YouTube, it's really hard to watch everyone's videos, especially ones that do a lot of videos weekly or multiple times in the week. So I did watch your machete one recently, and I didn't watch the one that you put out today. But what gives you inspiration for certain ideas on things that you do?
I mean, the projects, I try to build them around or come up with the ideas based on something that either we need for our house. That's where a lot of it came from, was just, we need a bed, so I make a bed. We need some shelves, so I make some shelves. And a lot of it is just purely that. And then the other stuff is I have an interest in X, but I don't have any reason to do it. Blacksmithing. There's no practical reason for me to know how to be a blacksmith because I live in a civilized place where I don't need to do that, but I'm really interested in it. So instead of buying a $5 machete, I bought a forge and an anvil and some hammers and some gas and some this and some that and some steel, and then I made my own machete, which is like, kind of a stupid expensive way to do it, but I got an experience in that thing.
Oh, yeah.
So the projects for me are usually either to fill a specific need for me or maybe somebody I know, or to just explore something, or because I want something to exist that just has never existed, like a 4-foot Optimus Prime gun or R2D2.
Or the Mandalorian's rifle.
Yeah. So like right here, I got R2D2. I have the Mando rifle. I have Shore Trooper armor, and there's no practical reason to have any of those things. But
this is very true.
but they're a lot of fun. Yep.
Chris, you have any questions for him?
Yeah. So I mean, I was going to say, how much of what you do is you imparting knowledge that you have onto other people, and how much is I'm learning how to do this for the first time. Let me show you my journey.
It's probably a lot more of the latter there. I think for the most part, even if I've done something before, I'm not like hyper proficient in anything. So I definitely would not call myself a pro in anything or a master or anything. Yeah, I mean, if I've done woodworking, I'm still really uneasy about it. I still don't probably have the best way to do it, or like have all of the chops to just be able to do the right thing every time. So I think more often than not, it's like me just trying to figure it out, and along the way being like, oh, that didn't work. Don't do what I just did, because, I learned for you, that kind of thing. And then there's some stuff where I have a little bit of experience enough that I can say, in the past, this has worked for me. So take that as a recommendation. But I still, even with that stuff, I still see that what has worked for me once or twice, somebody else comes in and says, nope, based on my experience, that's still the wrong way to do it. Or that's not the best way to do it, or whatever. So I really don't go into the videos with like all right, class, gather round, let me impart some knowledge. It's not like that at all. It's just like the whole purpose of I like to make stuff as a company, because I mean, it's not just me. There's a company of people here now. There's 4 of us that work full time to do this stuff. The whole purpose of the thing is to convince people, to make people understand that they can do more than they think they can, that they're capable, whether they have the experience or they've ever been put in the situation or they have the tools. None of that stuff matters. They can, if they want to. And so I think our goal, whether it's showing, sharing knowledge or just showing experimentation, is to be like, hey, like, I'm giving it a shot, and I'm just seriously just a dude in my basement. That means you can too. So find a thing that you care about. Maybe it's not R2D2 or whatever, but find a thing that you care about, that you want to see exist, and give it a shot. That's really our goal with all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I definitely kind of feel the same way. I mean, my experience with life, I've always been a really fast learner, and so I've always thought that I was good at anything. But what I've learned is that while I might be good at anything, I'm not great at anything. I've never been a pro at any one thing, and so. But my parents always taught me that you can do anything you put your mind to, and they've always believed that whatever I wanted to do, I could do it if I just if I really buckled down and tried my hardest to learn how to do that thing, I could do it. And so one of the things that I really enjoy is I mean, in my videos, because I'm MrCarrellScience, I am a teacher, and so I come off as like, let me teach you how to do this, but a lot of times in my videos, I'm like doing something wrong or totally making a mistake, and I think that's part of it, is just showing, just because I'm a teacher doesn't mean that I do everything right on the first try, because I'm still learning right along with you, and I kind of try to impart that kind of same thing in my videos to people who are watching.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's more important to teach somebody how to learn than to teach them a piece of, information, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. So obviously I go by the handy outdoor nerd, because I'm a big nerd. Obviously, like you, I mean, you've got R2 right behind you that you're working on. But I mean, I try to do practical printing as well. I try to do things and show things that printing can be useful. It's not like, oh, look, hey, look, I printed a Pikachu that can sit on my desk. It's, oh, look, this is for my antenna that I got to watch the Super Bowl, to watch the Chiefs win, to go where the satellite dish was whenever we got the house, but it wouldn't fit. So I put a PVC pipe in for the piece that goes to the antenna, put it in there, and I modeled, which did not take long. It's just a bunch of circles, just extruded. So the PVC pipe goes on inside this, and this locks over and holds it in place. Practical print.
Yeah. Sure.
I fixed a riding mower with it. Actually, I 3D printed bushings for my mower.
Nice.
So, I mean, I've fixed my mom's kitchen drawers. Her little, right in the back of the cabinet, right where the drawer, this little slide part. I'm not sure what you'd really call them. The rails where the wheels go in. Right at the very back, there's that plastic piece that mounts into the wall. Well, the wall of the cabinets. It actually broke, and so what I did was I remodeled that part, printed it for her, and put it in there. Well, then the other piece that actually sits on the rail, that part broke. So I modeled that, printed it for her, and put it on there. So I try to show people that 3D printing can be fun to make, geeky things, like Ultimate Mjolnir, Pikachu, just a bunch of other things that you want, toys. We've got a friend, Joe Larson. He goes by the 3D printing professor. This is one aspect of it. He's got a Kickstarter coming up Monday, I believe, the 10th, and it's for Print-a-Blocks. These little Lego-like blocks that you can attach and make mechs, different styles of mechs yourself. So there's so many applications you can do with 3D printing, but not all of them are just little things that sit there. That's something that kids can play with. My son was actually playing with it and wouldn't let me take a picture of it after I got it put together. But, I like to do things and just show things that are practical and more logical to do, not just something that someone's going to think that, oh, well, this is just kind of a niche hobby for making little trinkets.
Yeah, I think that was for a long time. That was my problem with 3D printing as a technology, but as the use case for it was just like, well, I've got a 3D printer, and now I'm going to print a bunch of Pikachus and a bunch of little tchotchkes to just put around, and then it's going to sit there, and I'm not going to use it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people just didn't when it was first beginning to come up and the printers were first beginning to get affordable. People thought the idea was super cool, but the practical application side of it just wasn't there because it was tied to 3D modeling. And so if you don't have a history there and you don't have a simple path to get to the basic modeling, then you don't have a way to get to practical printing.
Yeah.
And over the past several years, the tools are just changing really rapidly and making the modeling side of it a lot more accessible, which is just making the whole rest of the process more accessible.
Oh yeah. So
it's kind of a joke on the stream that if you want something done poorly, make sure that I model it, because I'm terrible at 3D modeling. A lot of time, let me just, first of all, it'll get the job done. It just might not be the prettiest, but usually I can make something work. But absolutely, it's getting much more affordable. It's getting much more. The modeling software is getting easier, more powerful, easier to use, simpler. And that was, my first printer was an ANET A8. I paid $170 for it. But even at $170, getting my wife to agree that I needed a 3D printer, I had to justify the price of it somehow.
Yep.
Yeah. So another practical print that I did recently. So the town I live in a small town. So whenever you're like, oh, the small town that I live in, whenever you did the Christmas tree game, which I thought was really cool, I was like, well, I live in a small town too. So the school, the ag teacher, he's got a belt sander. It's got the side disc, and then you got the top belt. They don't make the gears for them anymore. So what I did was I 3D modeled them, because I've also modeled gears numerous times. I fixed actual printer copiers, like the huge, massive ones. I actually, one of my best videos is that video of modeling that gear for it. And So I modeled it, got it printed, and put it in it, and it works great. It's out of PLA. I don't really use that printer a lot, but I wanted to show practical application for it. So like, I know how to do this. I know what to do. Just kind of count the teeth, use my caliper, get it all done. So I modeled, and I've gone through a couple different revisions by putting them on there for him. But now he's got it working again with printed at ABS filament, 100% infill for both of his gears I needed. His belt had stripped both of the gears out. So now he's got it working when he was going to have to just get rid of the machine because they don't make the part anymore.
That's awesome. Nice.
So
that's an interesting
question for you.
That's an interesting thing to think about real quick, though, that like a lot of people complain about the fact that the output of 3D printing is generally plastic. And so you're adding to the plastic waste of the world, which is true. And there's a lot of waste along with printing. But in that case, like think of all the stuff in that machine and countless other examples like that are not going into the scrapyard and not going into landfill because you printed a tiny little piece of plastic to stick in there and fix the thing. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I had to do a couple different things because, say this is the gear. On part of it, for the very low part that sits on the motor, they had the original piece. There's a little flat spot like right here. Well, the shaft for the motor is completely round. There's no flat spot. I don't know why they had it on there, but every time when I printed it and had it like that, it kind of angled the piece. It did not want to set right. So I went in. That's one of the revisions that I had to do. I got rid of that, made it a complete circle. And then he actually asked me to take the gears, like the gears came up to like, say this is the gears. There's this open spot up here. Asked me to extend the gears all the way so the belt would actually grip it more if it actually slipped out some. So, but that's the one thing I like about it is I can go and print something, not 100% infill, test it out. Yes, it's going to waste some plastic, but if I don't do 100% infill, see if it fits it right and works, and then I can go back and print it again with 100% infill once I know how it needs to be.
So when I do projects, I always end up with a bunch of scraps. And I am two things. I'm notoriously a hoarder, but I'm also a notorious procrastinator. And so I have all of these scraps, and it just keeps amassing this bigger and bigger pile. And so, like, at what point when you're doing a project do you think I should keep this? And at what point do you say it's better to just get rid of it?
So I make a new thing at least every week. So I have a huge amount of scrap. In my old shop, my old house, which we moved here 2.5 years ago. So before this, I was in a one-car garage. It was a little bit smaller than a one-car garage, and that was all the space I had for all the tools, all the supplies, scrap, all that stuff. So I had to be really intentional about what I kept. So I came up with this little idea of having other than big stuff, let's just talk about things that are, this big, something like that down. I came up with 2 storage units. One is a small shelf that was about this tall, about that long, and I could just stack whatever I could stack on it, but it was limited. And then I also had a plastic bucket, or like a little Tupperware type thing. It's about this big, about that tall. And anything that was small that I could hold in my hand, I would throw in that little bucket. And those were my containers. That was my scrap. And so when those things got filled up, where I couldn't put anything else in, that was the time that I had to dump it all out on the table, go through like, of this, half of it has to go. So I would take out half of the least possibly used things, the whatevers, and get rid of that, put the other half back in, and then now I've like culled my scrap collection. But I think the big thing is having those containers in the first place. And so when you're getting out of hand, when those have filled up, and that's the time that you have to take an afternoon, cull the stuff, and then you have room to fill it back up again. That's the way I did it. And that's kind of still how we do it now, even though I have a lot more space than I used to. There's still a hardwood container, little plastic container, and I think it's the same container. And so anytime we have walnut offcuts or teak or something that, that stuff's like kind of precious. Like I don't want to just throw it away.
Oh yeah.
And I'll put it in that basket or that bucket, and then have to go through it every once in a while.
Oh yeah. My wife harps on me on stuff like that. She says, "You're a hoarder." I was like, "I'm not a hoarder. I just know that I could use this to fix something, and I usually do. It's just not that moment."
Yeah, I mean, you have to have the supplies in the future, so you're just future-proofing your supply chain.
Yeah, and as you were talking about your one-car garage, because I remember your videos of doing stuff like that. And actually, I think the first video I actually watched of yours was your RetroPie arcade. What you're starting to do.
Oh yeah, the very first one. Wow.
Yeah, so I think that was the first one that I actually got to see.
Cool. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. And so I did follow the steps. I didn't make the arcade, but I mean, I had the arcade on the Raspberry Pi. I followed your steps there, got that done. I still want to make an arcade. My wife says no, but I want to. But as we know, don't piss off the wife.
That's right. I mean, I've still got that machine, and it's in there, and it's awesome, and I love having it. But what is far more practical would be to make, and I've always kind of wanted to do this, but I've never done it. A lot of other people have, is to take the Pi and take the controls and build a really nice little case, a two-person kind of fight stick situation that's all self-contained, and then like you sit down in your living room, you run an HDMI cable to it, and you just play the game. And then you can put it away when you're done, but you still get the fight stick stuff and the button presses, and you can still light them all up and all that stuff. That's a far more practical way to do it.
And actually, I actually have seen that made. Last week, actually, I saw. So it was like a yellow box, and then it had like a clear acrylic, and you had your buttons, and you could see the Pi arcade down there.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome thing to do.
I think I saw a video last year by, oh man, I can't remember her YouTube channel name, but her name's Clarissa, and she made a RetroPie arcade that was in a lunchbox, and then she had a hole cut in the front of the lunchbox, and she had a full-size projector inside of it. So you pull out the lunchbox and set it up on a table, and it projects it on the wall, and then whenever you're done, you just put the controllers inside the lunchbox, close it up, and then you put it away.
My friend Wes, who runs a channel called Geeksmithing, he did that, but he did it with an NES. So the NES has the controllers and the projector and all the stuff on the inside of it. Pretty awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pop up screen real quick. So this is my shop.
Nice.
So I worked on getting these set. I've got these bottom ones fairly decent. I want to extend them out farther this way so I can put longer boards on there. I'm going to put some more down here that are going to have like the legs kicking down so I can put heavier boards on there. This has got built-in storage there, which I've got pallet boards sticking out, so I can't open the door very far. This workbench and this workbench were there. I've made this, and you can see my pile of wood that I kind of have right now. I've got some white oak, and then I've got some pine. So that's my shop that I've been trying to get somewhat set up and functional. So what is some advice you would have, since I mean you've had your limitation on what you can do? The area I have is 13 by 21.
Okay, yeah, my old one was 12 by 20, so pretty similar. One mobile bases cost about $50, $60, something like that, and you can put them under every single tool. Make sure that you get the ones that you can lock down, like you can lift the wheels and they drop into place so that they're stable. But that will save you so much hassle of like getting your table saw out of the way when you need to do something big in the middle of the floor. So put casters or mobile bases on everything that you possibly can, and then anytime you're building surfaces like your miter saw there, make sure that that table, the surface of that table, is the same as your table saw. So take your table saw height, whatever that ends up being, and let that be your countertop height for everything else. You know, even when it's on wheels, everything at that one, and then every table you have can become in feed and out feed for every other tool. And so, you know, you could pull that saw off, roll that behind your table saw, and now you've got an outfeed table. And so you just want to, I always think you should consolidate surfaces as much as possible, keep everything mobile, go all the way to the ceiling with your storage, because nobody uses those top corners up there.
Yeah,
but
you can kind of see up there. I've actually can't see all the way up, but I've got some plywood actually up there.
Yeah.
So there's you can kind of see it right here when I take it up a little bit. You can see the sheet of plywood, but then right over here you can barely see. Yeah, you can barely see another little piece of plywood. It's that really thin plywood. So
yeah, I mean, I would build, you know, storage up into all of those top corners of the room, because that's a lot of space that kind of gets unused. You know, put stuff up there like deep storage, but
oh yeah. But because I've seen your stuff, and actually I don't know how long ago it was, but I watched it recently, the video where you take that workbench and you've got the little leather sewing machine on there as well, and all this other stuff, and just have it on hinges.
Yeah.
Flipping up. So, because I've thought about, you know, I want to put in the center, I want my table saw. I want to make kind of a mobile base, but I want my table saw there. I would like my router here, that I can kind of have that the fence kind of backing up for my router as well. But on part of the end, I want to make it so I can actually set like a clamp, so I can do, you know, like hand planing type of on it as well. But I wasn't thinking about, you know, putting that there, because I thought, well, maybe over here I could set up and have it that level like you do for your compound miter saw, where, you know, you got it all set up to where you've got your measurement tape and all that there. But I mean, if I did it that way, where that was built into it, and I could just like flip it over and have it set up on top, it would allow me to have more usage of other things over here as well.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to, you know, everybody's shop is different, because everybody makes different stuff, so they need to use different tools. And so it really comes down to like what you specifically are going to use the most when you're setting up your shop. And that's why I always say to keep everything as mobile as possible on bases, because at least for me, I started out making a lot of pallet stuff.
Yeah, and
I got tired of that, and then I started moving on to something else, and then I started doing metalworking, and then I started doing this, and I started doing this, and so it was just constantly shifting around, and pushing things around on wheels is a lot easier than scooting.
Oh, well, for sure. And as I said, like all those pallets out there, I've made signs for friends and stuff. Like one of my friends, they had their first child a couple of years back that I worked with, and I made them a sign so I did the woodworking with the pallets, but then I also did 3D printing for the letters. And so it was a 3-dimensional sign that came up about that tall off of it. So it said the first, middle, and last name on it. I've also done wood burning as well, where I've done the pallet wood. And you can actually see this board right here. This is actually pallet boards there for a sign, so I can wood burn. But the last one I did was the mountainscape for my friends, and actually they have it up above in their house.
Nice.
So I completely understand, like, you know, pallets are great, but pallets are limited on how thick they are, how long they are, how wide they are. If you go out and buy wood to do something else, it makes it a more flexible project that can be done.
Yeah, but then you have much bigger pieces you have to handle and store and all that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chris, do you have any more questions on woodworking?
You know, not that I can think of right now. I mean, I got a million questions, because I want to learn how to do everything. but I think maybe we should go on to our first segment.
All right. So our segment that we normally do is cool prints, and I showed a brief summary of the stuff that I was going to show, but there is a print, and I did send Chris this earlier. I'm going to pop my screen back up. So this is a handheld 3D printer. It prints skin grafts onto burn victims.
Wow.
It uses stem cells. So it was developed around, well, it showcased in 2018, and they've gone through different revisions of it now. But the success rate is fairly high on it now. I'll have it linked down in the description a little bit later on. They so we get all of our things kind of like from all 3DP, and this was posted maybe 12 hours ago now. Yeah, so yeah, 12 hours ago. So it goes through and kind of talks about it. It's from the University of Toronto, and so it's 2018, and so it's not very long, but there's a little video to it. Now, I don't have the sound on, but you can kind of see it. So it's kind of like a more of a resin printer kind of point of view, to where it sends that liquid through. But they'll grow the stuff for the grafts in a petri dish and stuff like that to get it going. But then you just kind of apply it like that.
Huh.
I've seen something like this that they use for like sealing wounds.
Yep.
So like instead of stitches or something, they would use that with a UV light, and it would actually seal the wound, but without using stitches. And I always wondered if it was true or not, if it was one of those, like, you know, fake scammy things that you see online, but it looked really similar to that.
Yeah, no, that's actually true. Can't remember, but it wasn't a very old person that actually came up with that. It was, I think, a kid in his teens or whatever. But yeah, no, that is a legit thing that to kind of help seal up wounds, which is just really cool. But I thought that was kind of a cool little thing to toss in there real quick to kind of show everybody that, yeah, it's not 3D printed. It's not a 3D printer, but it's like 3D printing and like FDM 3D printing mixed with resin 3D printing, but like a tape gun to where you just apply it like that. But it's to help burn victims, you know, so where they need skin grafts, they take their stem cells, they grow them, and then they just apply it. And then it helps prevent scarring. Actually, I think it's like 10 times better. So they have less scarring with this method.
That's pretty cool.
So they want to try to do other applications other than, you know, some burn victims. And so say someone gets, you know, like a big, you know, cut where their flesh gets peeled off, they can try to apply that to help that flesh come back. So I will pop yours up there.
So this is a cool print. This is actually a dragon that was modeled by Turncarn, who is a good friend of the show. And the thing that makes this so cool is so I subscribe to a monthly filament subscription box called the Alien 3D UFO box. And the inside my subscription box came with this marble PLA. And I thought it was really cool because as soon as I saw it and I saw that it was going to give it a marbled texture and a marbled look, I knew that I had to print this dragon in it, because I just thought, man, that'll look just like like a gargoyle hanging up on the top of a cathedral or something. And so I 3D printed this dragon in this marble PLA, and I posted it to Twitter because I thought it was really cool. And the company that makes this filament is called Zi-Rui, and they saw the print. They thought it was really cool, and so they actually offered a 5% discount code on their filament through their Amazon store. And so I think that the link is in the description for anybody who's watching if they wanted to check it out or whatever. But they said they'd give 5% off in their Amazon store if you want to check it out. And they have some really cool. They have different filaments. That's what I really like about it is I was looking through it and I didn't see any like white PLA or blue ABS or whatever. It was always like it has, you know, black galaxy filament that was like black with like sparkly glitter and stuff in it, and like they are just coming. They're about to release a glow in the dark PETG filament, and so like they're doing a whole bunch of really cool stuff. And so he was excited to see that this was going to be on the show. But yeah, I thought this was a really cool print. It turned out really nice, and it was done in a marble PLA, so it looks like a stone statue, which makes it really, really cool. And then I do have one more cool print that I wanted to show off, and that is so I'm participating. I teach robotics now. I used to teach science. I used to teach math, but now I'm teaching robotics, and we use Lego robots, the Lego Mindstorms robots. And so as part of me being the robotics teacher, I decided I wanted to give an extra challenge to some of my students. And so we started a couple of different robotics teams this year. And so our robotics teams have been traveling around the state competing in different competitions. And there's another competition that's coming up in May that's sponsored by NASA, and it's called Roads on Mars. And they're doing it as a way of getting people excited for the Mars rover that they're going to be launching soon. And so the whole competition is about exploring the surface of Mars, testing soil samples for presence of methane gas or for any moisture. They're trying to find, are there signs of life on Mars? And so part of the competition is your team has to build a communications dish. And so you fly this drone over to a beach ball that represents Mars. So it's basically as if you were flying in a shuttle to Mars, and you have to orbit this beach ball. And while you're orbiting the beach ball, other members of your team have to go over to this mat and build some sort of a communications tower. So it has to be, the requirements are, it has to be at least 12 pieces, I think, in order for it to qualify. And so we were coming up with some ideas, and we took a page out of 3D printing professor's book where he came out with the printer blocks. So we kind of created our own block system it's Lego-esque. So basically we made these little blocks that are all the same size. They're 50 by 50 by 30, and then they have this top piece kind of sticking up. And then it's got a hole in the bottom so that they can stack one on top of each other. And then because I needed 12 pieces, I have 9 people in my group. So we kind of came up with this way of building the communications tower out of these blocks. And then each one of my students went on Tinkercad and they customized the brick with whatever they wanted to do. So it says Wings of Fire. They got a little dragon that they drew using a scribble tool in Tinkercad. They wrote their name on it. And they have a flame that says FL. Because they decided to name their team the Flaming Llamacorns, and so it's a piece that represents that student individually, but it also represents our team. And then when we go to competition, they're going to use these blocks and stack them up in a certain way to create a communications dish as part of the actual competition. And so the reason why I thought it was such a cool print is not because the quality, because it's actually not a very good print, but it's cool because my students, this was all something that came out of their minds, and I have students that are 12, 13 years old. And so to think that they were able to take an idea from their head and go onto a computer, draw it out, design it, and then I can 3D print it and hand it to them and say, this is what you created. It just sparks their imagination to go even further. That's what I love about it.
That's great. Very cool. I don't have a print, but I have a couple I could talk about. We just recently got a Sl1, the Prusa Resin Printer, the Sl1.
Okay.
And we are beginning to do tests with it and stuff. And so Josh took it to his house to work on in the evenings and kind of test it out and everything. And he printed out, it's just watching him set up the machine and get it running. It is a super nice machine. The setup process was really clean and really nice. But anyway, he brought back a print of a Batman that he had done, and it was, I don't know where he got the files from, but it was about this big. He made it in 4 pieces. Took a total of like 10 hours with a resin print, which is crazy fast for something like that. And it is a beautiful print. It was really, really amazing. And so one of the things, he was running through some tests on that printer to, just try it out and everything. And he modeled a couple of small pieces, but he was going with kind of known models to see how they printed. That one came out really well. And the thing that I'm planning on doing with it first off is, so I have a Land Cruiser, and this is a model of my Land Cruiser. It's the same one, but I have a snorkel on mine that I put on. So I'm in the process right now of modeling the snorkel that goes right here. I know this is really blown out and hard to see, but it goes right here and comes up and then folds out. But it's following this profile and this profile, which is not, this is not straight up and down. So I'm in the process now of trying to model a lifelike, to my truck snorkel and then resin print it so that it will be really high detail and have all the grates on it and all the little stuff it needs that I can just snap it on here. Because when I build this model, I'm going to make all the modifications to this that I made on my truck. So it'll have like a mini lift on it and bigger tires that I'll print out of, some flexible something. And I'm going to have to modify a bunch of the details on it that are a little bit different than mine. So I'm excited about trying out that printer and the resin stuff. And we have another resin printer, and it's okay. But this one is really, really nice.
Yeah, I've seen some of what Joel Telling has shown on the Sl1 that he has. And I mean, the front of the vat just kind of dips down like that. I know that some of them on the side is where it dips down, but just like all the stuff that was being said on just like the the quality of it, just how detailed it was for all this stuff. And yes, it wasn't the actual Prusa people that actually made it, but they had a hand in doing all that. And then you got did you guys get the little cleaning thing with it as well?
Yeah, the station. I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called either.
Other thing. Yeah, so I haven't even really gotten to use them yet. I watched Josh kind of pull them out of the box and get them all set up, but he was saying even with the cleaning station, it's really nice because there's magnets in the system, and so there's no interface, I don't think. So it knows if you're putting in the container, it knows that it's a washing cycle. And if there's no container in and you run it, then it knows, because there's no magnetic connection, it knows that it's a curing cycle. And so just like simple things like that, you don't have to fiddle with an FUI, with a UI. You can just kind of like put the thing in and it knows what to do. And then you take it out and put the thing in and it knows what to do. And that's
awesome. Pretty cool.
One day we're going to get to a point where 3D printing is going to be as easy as using a microwave. You're just going to be like, oh, today I need this. And so you're just going to push a couple buttons and it's just going to automatically do it for you. And it really is probably going to get that simple.
It might.
Oh. There was a picture I saw on one of the Facebook groups, and I don't know why I don't take a picture of this sometimes, Chris. This has bitten me in the butt like 3 times now. It was on a show. I don't remember what show they were saying, but they had like these duplicator things to like make food, copy food. It was a flash forge.
I saw that. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. There's 2 flash forges right next to each other, And like whenever they got close, you could see like the Z rods go down. You could see the nozzle head and everything. It was you spent a lot of money on two props that you really didn't need to spend that much money on. But okay.
It's funny, like there have been several printers that have shown up in the background of different, like in Ant-Man, I think there was like a Form 1 kind of in the background, just like a set piece because it's big and orange and looks kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so they freaked out. And the company was posting about, look, we're in the background of Ant-Man.
Yeah, it's really funny, kind of the stuff that they do in the unrealistic things that science fiction has upon it. I mean, yes, you can 3D print things, and one thing we've talked about is like 3D printing guns. But have you seen Lost in Space on Netflix?
Yes. Okay.
Well, obviously, they 3D print a gun there that it takes time, but the unrealistic aspects of it. Hey TK, how's it going? Is that you're printing this? Okay, printing the gun itself is one thing, but you're printing the gun that instantly has bullets and gunpowder and all this that works. I mean, yes, they're supposed to be farther in the future, but that's not how it works. Yeah. And now the things that I really liked on what they did with the printer, I mean, the things that they made, I mean, yes, you print a tool like a wrench, socket, just things like that. The one thing I really liked was the kind of knee brace, like that helped push apart like that to help your knees. So then it has like motors and stuff kind of in it, which again, logical doesn't work. But the aspect of 3D printing something like that, but you can put the motors and stuff in after the fact, I think is a really great idea.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of an inevitable future. You were talking about it being like a microwave, and I think eventually there will be some kind of standard structures for things like knee braces and wrist braces and, standards that need to be slightly customized. And I could very easily see some sort of a hybrid structure that either has motors and stuff or it has like different material hybrids, to where you have like some sort of a wrist guard that has a super hard, tough material that's printed and then flexible stuff. And there's a standard for that, and then it can be modified in real time to match patient A and then printed right out all as one big thing. I think that's absolutely in the near future.
Yeah, I've seen.
It doesn't already exist. It may already exist.
Yeah, I've seen braces for casts 3D printed and stuff. TK says it was on Picard. That's what that was on, and they used them at printers as replicators.
Nice.
One whereas I'm at home, so I don't have coffee. You'll have to go get your own donuts.
So and a few months ago, Adrian Boyer was talking about a new concept in 3D. He's kind of exploring. It's not something that I think we have the technology to make happen right away, but I think he's thinking it's the wave of the future. So essentially, it would be a resin-style printer where basically you could line up electrons and things within the fluid, within the resin, so that you could send an electrical current through the printer, through the resin at a specific location, and it would instantly cure the resin in that shape. So basically we'd be talking about 3D printing at the speed of light, essentially. Instead of doing layers by flashes, you would do the entire object in one flash of electricity, where the electricity would be the catalyst that causes the resin to harden, and it would harden instantly in that exact shape that you wanted.
Huh.
I mean, when you think about it, it sounds like plausible. It almost sounds like you could actually make that happen. But I think the thing he said was the limiting factor is that even the resins that we have right now they don't carry electricity. They're not conductors, not very good conductors. So that's where we're headed.
Yeah, you'd have to modify them to be more conductive. So speaking with the resin stuff, I remembered something, which is one thing that bit me in the butt that I should have saved. It was people being able to take like McDonald's oil, like the used oil from McDonald's, and reusing it and turning it into resin prints. Like you use the oil and it makes resin prints.
Huh.
Yeah, I was just like kicking myself.
Something that they're working on, or
no, that's it. It's actually been done. I don't know how it's done. Like I had it right there, and like I thought I had it saved and stuff, but I didn't.
Well, I know that there are people that make their own fuel, and a lot of times they'll make biodiesel or whatever, and so they'll actually go to restaurants that are pumping out their old frying oil, and they'll pump it into a big tank, and then they'll use that to create their own biodiesel.
Yeah, and I've seen that people do that. So you smell French fries when you're just driving somewhere.
Right.
But no,
right.
they took the oil, and I don't know what they did, but they made it so it was able to be resin printed. I mean, and they said high detailed. Whenever you make a pancake, is your pancake high detailed, or do you have a bunch of holes in it? So they had a zoomed up image of a butterfly, and I could see little pits in it. I'm like, that's not high detailed, people.
Well, that's interesting because I mean plastics are made out of oil, right? And that makes sense. And so when you think about it that way, I mean, resin is just a different type of plastic. So
yeah.
I mean, I wonder about the chemistry behind it and how easily you could get your hands on the chemicals that would translate McDonald's frying oil into a resin. But I suppose it's possible.
It's possible. I mean, obviously they were showing that it was, but the thing you have to think on is one, it's impure oil. It's not going to have all that purity of regular oil, but also you don't want your resin liquid to get on you because that's going to give you a chemical burn. Oil gets on you, you're not going to get a chemical burn. Only burn you're going to get is if it's at a hot oil. So there's definitely a big difference there.
And all your prints would smell like French fries.
That would be okay.
What a huge bonus, right?
Like walk in like
nuggets.
Smells like McDonald's in here, guys. Oh, I'm just printing some McNuggets.
I mean, PLA smells like corn syrup. So I mean, because it's made out of corn syrup. So it would, instead of smelling like pancakes, you'd smell like McDonald's French fries.
This is true. but yeah, so there's a couple of cool things and fun facts that, like, hey, if you watch Picard, look out for some Flash Forge printers. So,
and I've seen 3D printers are becoming a lot more popular in like cartoons and stuff too. And so, I mean, I think the other day Elliot put on a cartoon. I think it was like Beyblade or something, and the kid's like making a new top, and you see this 3D printer like flying around, printing a new custom piece, and everyone's like in awe. Look at the lasers and all kinds of cool stuff.
This is very true. There was actually an anime that I saw that there was actually a 3D printer back in the background printing. And so because you said Beyblades, I actually have to do this. I wasn't actually going to show this as a topic, but I've got no choice now. 3D printed Beyblades.
My kids would love that, but I'm not going to tell them.
So, I mean, it's super simple. I mean, you get your 3D printed stuff, and to do this piece, all you really got to do is get a flexible filament for the little handle part. But 3D printed Beyblades.
Yeah, you made the mistake of saying that when my kids were around.
Let's see, and you don't even need a flexible to do it, but you could do a flexible as well.
I think that would work great with like a nylon or something.
Oh yeah.
Have you guys seen the flexible resin?
I've heard about it. I've not seen it because I don't have a resin printer. So
Well, I don't have a resin printer either. I mean, I don't have anywhere to put a resin printer that it would stay safe for my kids. But I've heard that they've come out recently within the last few months, like a resin that is flexible. So it would be like a TPU, but in a resin printer.
That's actually been around for a long time. I had a Form 1 several years ago, like when they first came out, and that thing is completely defunct now. But they even had flexible resin for that, and that was one of the first kind of, consumer SLA printers. And so, I mean, the chemistry for that's been around for quite a while, but I think now that the SLA printers in general are becoming, the cost is coming down, and all of the stuff that goes with them is also coming down.
Yeah, makes it more common.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they've got flexibles out there, which is really cool. You've got your practical uses and impractical uses for it. My GoPro, actually, I 3D printed with my flexible that I have. I printed a little case that goes over my lens, so it kind of flexes to get on it, but helps protect it from getting scratched instead of doing a hard plastic. So. So did you know that you could, with your resin printing swap out vats? Depends on your printer. The Prusa won't be able to probably, but while you're printing, you pause it. You could swap out a vat and change your color of your resin.
Oh.
If you have one that you can actually remove it and then put a new one on there, you could swap out and have a multicolored print.
I know there's been a lot of experimenting lately with using alcohol inks on resin models so that you can actually like color the resin. And I saw somebody made a tray that had different colors of alcohol ink mixed in with the resin. So that you're able to print in multiple colors at the same time.
That
seems like a novel idea, but at the same time, like when you do a resin print, you often can't print. If you were doing, I don't know, if you were doing some cube, for instance, you can't really usually print a flat side of that straight up on the build plate because you can't get it off. Nope. And so you end up having to print that cube like this.
Or with supports straight underneath it, flat like that.
Yeah, to push it
off. Yeah.
But so a lot of time the orientation has to be kind of wacky just to be able to get the thing off the bed.
Yeah.
And because of that, doing like those any color variation or swapping or any of that stuff, it seems like it would be super hard to control. It may look really cool, but like I don't think you could effectively color like half of something and then half of it something else or whatever.
Yeah. No, TK, I'm not coming down. Just a lot of talking going on. But no. So does anybody in chat have a question for Bob before we get off of here? Because I don't know how much time he's got left to spare.
I was trying to find something. I thought that I tagged you in it, but I'm not seeing it on Twitter. I put the hashtag AC Show on it. You remember that heart that had the tubing going through the middle?
Oh yes, I do. I did see that.
Can you pull that up? I can't find it on here. I don't know why.
Give me just a moment. Oh, yeah, this was actually pretty cool. Notifications.
So essentially what they did is in their resin model, they added a tube, like a void, I guess, that would fill in through the model so that they could go back with a syringe and inject a dye into it and they could add a colored loop inside of the model. And so speaking of, coloring resin prints, you could add specific voids in specific areas, and then you could fill those with different dyes in order to create a multicolored effect. I wonder if you could use that to make like a lithophane style something, or print voids and fill it with different colors so that when you hold it up to the light, it's like a full color picture.
Did when you were growing up, did you guys ever have those like glass, or your grandparents maybe have those glass things with the color water on the inside, like the where you hold the bottom and the barometric pressure makes the water go up? And you could do something like that where you have like a clear resin print and then fill different parts of it with liquid throughout, and so you'd end up with kind of a crazy looking old school glass. I don't even know what those were called, but whoa.
So yeah, I found it.
That's wild.
Yeah,
that is crazy.
It looks so cool. It looks cooler while it's filling than it does to be all the way full, but it definitely looks sweet.
So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So
Oh no.
all right, everybody. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Bob, for coming on here with us. We're gonna get off of here. It was great having Bob on here, and maybe at some point in time we'll have Bob on again, and we'll talk about some more stuff and just different topics. But until everybody, next week we'll be on Chris's show, and he's going to pick what subject we talk about that week. So until then, everybody, have making, take care. We'll catch you later. And anything you want is listed in the links down below. All right.